Um, Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. We are going to wait just a couple minutes to wait for another participants to enter to the conference. And we will be start very soon.
All right, let's begin.
Okay, let's begin. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We have prepared this presentation regarding our top picks for 2026. The common denominator around the three countries that we are going to present here is that we face elections in this year, for example, Chile recently, and Colombia and Peru in 2026. And this create some challenge that we are want to you be able to take advantage of them and make good profits in 2026. Now I'm going to let you with Rafael. He is going to present Chile and also the big main ideas. And then Rafael Molina, who is going to present Colombian topics. And finally me, that I'm going to present the Peruvian topics. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ed. We're going to start with the three major pillars of the world. Right now, we are seeing a big change from globalization that has given room to fragmentation in the world. Starting from the Liberation Day was a huge topic, and that will impact obviously Latin America because there has an ongoing race for natural resources, and that will impact countries that have copper, lithium, and other natural resources. Another big pillar is the central banks. Currently are very expansive, trying to cut rates, but the problem is the sticky inflation in a lot of places, and also that the sensibility to the longer part of the curve is less and less. So basically, we'll see what will happen with the rate cuts. And finally, the AI. Basically, that's a huge challenge, both technologically and how will the labor market will change, and also creating a huge energy demand that will also impact Latin America from the side of the natural resources, and also we saw a little bit in Chile with the disinformation, and that will only continue moving forward in the elections, not only LatAm but also in the world. Now we are going to start with Chile, that just happened to have the election 2 days ago. We had the ballotage between Cas and Jara. Cas is far right, and Jara was a communist. And the victory of Cas was overwhelming, 58%. So basically, that marks a big swing to the right from the current government. It's fair to remember that the current government of Boric started with the people claiming for more social benefits 4 years ago, pensions, and right now the focus of the people, the Chilean people, is more on security and lower unemployment and economic growth. So obviously the swing is very well deserved. When we see the chambers that were elected, renewed half of the Senate and the lower chamber a month ago in the first round of the presidential elections, we see that when we see the colors, the red is the official party, the left and the communist, and the blue and violet is the right, the traditional right, and the far right. In green, we see the ecological parties that are more aligned with the socialist, and in yellow, we see the Partido de la Gente, that's the People's Party, the leader's translation, and that's without this axis of left and right, so probably could be swing to more to right. So the lower chamber that is in the external circle, it probably will allow a lot of reforms from the right. The Senate is more 50-50, so basically it's highly likely that only the more reforms of consensus will happen. So basically that will give stability moving forward. The 4/7 for a constitutional change are out of the question for the moment, because that will require a lot of leftist parliament members to concede, so that will not happen probably. And regarding caste, the major pillars that allowed in the left allowed caste to win the Chilean voters was restoring authority, combating crime, more economic growth. Basically, it's a classical right-wing candidate. And how will this land in laws in the right? CAS proposed a corporate tax reduction from 27 to 23. And probably that will pass if this is presented like a standalone in the first 3 months of the government, because there's a lot of consensus there, but they can also try to push for another tax reduction that won't allow that to happen. So it's very important that the corporate tax reduction and the investment fast track, that's another pillar. In the last years, since Boric and also from Piñera too, so 5, 6 years. In Chile, there's been a lot of problems approving project. Even approved project then get entangled in the judicial system. So basically, the investment fast track that was talked during this government and allows a project that isn't explicitly opposed from the government or with a time period to be implicitly approved. So that will allowed a lot more investment that was a little stopped because of the current environment. Also, CAS proposed spending cuts. They want to reduce the government spending by 6 billion. There is a lot of controversy there. That's the question mark because the probability of that happening is very unlikely. The numbers doesn't add up. So we will see what happens with the spending cuts. Also, labor flexibility, just to remind you, even though Boric, the current president, didn't do much, they did raise the minimum wage. They have the 40 hours law for labor. So basically, less hours to work and more wage, and also the pension funds reform also increase the labor cost. So CAS want to introduce some labor flexibility as a counterbalance to all the reforms that were well received by the people, but they are costing economic growth to the country. And just a quick overview of the macro of Chile. After the pandemic, we saw a lot of the GDP, the consumption recovering a lot. Although the big winner of this cycle, the average growth in the Boric mandate in the last 4 years was 2%. That's very low for Chile. It's going lower each president, but with CAS we expect at least 2.5. So obviously an improvement. But after all this recovery after the pandemic, we see services as the big engine and not so much of goods. Also, if we look at inflation that is very well controlled historically in Chile in the last decades, was already and we expect to be in the target of 3% by Q3 of the next year. So basically, there's another uncertainty there that could be discarded. And now we're going to go with the top picks. I have 2 top picks in Chile. One is a high risk, high return. Another one is a low risk, moderate return. The high risk, high return is Movistar Chile. This is a company that's been poorly managed since probably 10 years ago. This company was the biggest one 10 years ago and has been losing market share consistently, even through the pandemic. And even in 2023, they're still losing money also, because one thing was losing market share, but since 2 years ago, they start losing money. And all the alarms turn on in the Q4 of 2024, when they present results in March of this year, after the Marc Mutra, the new CEO of Telefónica España, that's the owner of Telefónica Chile, took charge. They reflect an impairment of the current assets, and that started to turn on all the alarms. Before, Movistar was traded like a pretty reasonable, robust issuer in Chile. After that, is like a company that could go bankrupt, and right now they are currently losing money. I project losing 150 million yearly. So Telefónica España is being very clear to say that they are selling non-core assets. Chile is on those. The Movistar Chile will only survive if there is a new backer. Telefónica España won't capitalize Movchi, but in the process, they are already receiving bids of Entel, América Móvil, and WOM also, among others. There was at first was a joint bid between América Móvil and Entel that was disbanded, but both companies are bidding for Movistar. Right now, when we see the price of the bonds that is in the mid 50s, they are they implicitly assuming 50% of the company going bankrupt, assuming the recovery of the WOM and the almost BTR bonds that were to 35 price. So that's an implicit probability of 50%. We believe that's a little high. I mean, a lot high. Should be around 20 to 30%. That is a high probability of going bankrupt, but almost half of the market. So basically, this is an investment that should be diversified, because even though it's a high risk, high reward, with a probability of going bankrupt of over a quarter, you have to diversify, because you have to have a lot of these bets in order not to go belly up when this happens. When we see the catch of this company will only last until Q4, Q3, so this transaction should happen quickly. And the biggest risk is the FNE, that's the antitrust unit in Chile. And there is a game theory there, because if the FNE start to get picky about who can buy what, the company could really go bankrupt, and then probably a judge will decide with what will happen to Movistar, and the FNE won't have anything to add to that. So there's a game theory there. Probably the FNE will be tough, but will allow some room to the bids of the current incumbents to go. The other topics is LatAm Airlines. This is a totally different story. This is a company that arose from bankruptcy not too long ago, and since then has been proven, has been showing very high margins, has been reducing the leverage with right now a very low leverage, growing high single digits. So basically, this a success story after the bankruptcy procedure, and we currently expect in the short medium term to be investment grade. Currently, it's only rated investment grade by S&P. Moody's has Baa2, which BB plus, but probably in the short medium term this will be investment grade. With that will be re-rated probably in risk metrics. Since the issuance of these bonds, obviously the bond has been going up, and when we see the debt profile, we don't see any risk. The EBITDA is a lot higher than the payments. So these are our second topic from Chile. And now I will leave you with Rafael Molina for the Colombian view.
Hi, well, I'm going to present the topics for Colombia. So we're going to start with the political situation. So one of the particularities of Colombia is that we're going to have elections next year. In March, we're going to have Senate, and in April, we're going to have presidential election. So one of the particularities of Colombia is that despite the growing deterioration in the public order, in the social order, the government is going to be able to tell a story of a sound economic policy, thanks to the reduction of the unemployment, and also thanks to a high economic growth in Q3, which reached 3.6%. So when we examine the origin of this economic growth, what we find is that it has been largely driven by an increase in the government spending, which reached 40% in Q3, and also by the growth in consumption. But when we try to analyze why the consumption is rising so much is basically in part because of the government spending, and also from the tailwind of the record levels in coffee prices, the increase in tourism, and the high remittances that the country is receiving right now. So in contrast, in investment, we see a very low growth, and this is basically driven by the low confidence levels that currently the country has. Can we go to the next? So the cost of this strategy is basically the worsening of the fiscal situation. We can see how by 2025, it is expected that the fiscal deficit is going to exceed 7%, and also public debt is probably going to reach 66% by year end. So the government response so far has been, well, they have not committed to any cut in spending. They actually triggered the escape clause from the fiscal rule, and also they try a failed tax reform. So the only thing they have done so far are a series of debt management operations in which they try to change the currency of the debt and trying to reduce a bit the cost of debt, but there are no serious attempts to really decrease the fiscal deficit for this year or for the next one. So who's going to have to deal with this fiscal situation? It's too early, but according to the polls, Iván Cepeda is leading the polls. He's the candidate of the government. He's a figure from the far left. So far, he has been silent about what kind of economic policy he's going to take, but he has been clear, he has been vocal that he's going to continue President Petro's policies. He's more known for, not for his advocacy for any specific economic policy, but more for trying to find a negotiating solution for the armed conflict in Colombia, and also for leading judicial actions against the military forces and for former president and against former President Álvaro Uribe. So in the second is Abelardo de la Espriella. He's a controversial lawyer, known for defending paramilitaries and very controversial people. So far, his policy, his statement is about a tough stand against crime, and he has been an advocate about a more market-friendly policy, but he also has not pointed out how he's going to resolve the fiscal deficit. And the third one is Sergio Fajardo, who is more of a centrist guy. This will be his third attempt to try to be president. Can we go to the next? So we believe it's too early to make predictions, although Iván Cepeda is leading in the polls. He has the advantage of being the only one with a consolidated ticket right now, and the other sector of the political spectrum in Colombia are very fragmented right now. So we believe as the other candidacies consolidate, we will have a better picture. However, we cannot deny that he's leading the polls, and the likelihood that the current administration is going to extend his tenure through Iván Cepeda is high. So we have to think about what are we going to do if he's the president, or to take into account this possibility. So we believe if Iván Cepeda is elected, he's probably going to encounter a fragmented Congress, as it happened with Gustavo Petro. So it's unlikely that he's going to be able to lead major reforms. And we also going to, as Petro had, he's probably going to have the counterbalance of the courts, of the judicial system. However, unlike in 2022, now Colombia is facing major fiscal imbalances. So if there is a paralysis, an institutional paralysis, we think there are macroeconomic imbalances in the coming year. So this is why we are concerned about Colombia and about this election. We go next. So what are our topics given this picture? Well, we still don't know who's going to be the president. So we think if the current administration is able to extend his tenure to Ivan Cepeda, and if major macroeconomic imbalances occur in the next 4 years, I think we should be positioned in export earners, who will be the best protected in case of if there is a major macroeconomic imbalance in the coming years. And in the case, our recommended are Geopark and Sierra Col. They are independent oil producers. And we also recommend these companies because if there is a political shift, which we still think is possible, they could be the major benefits from a political trade, as the government Petro has been very against the oil policy, the oil industry. We believe if there is a political shift, these companies can benefit from that shift and for a more friendly environment in favor of the oil industry. The other reason we are recommending these companies is because they are, compared with the other oil producers in Colombia, they have the lower operating costs, they have the lower discounts, and they are basically, the fields that they operate in Colombia are basically cash cows, which require low capital investments. So these are companies that, in case the oil price fall even more, they are very protected and they have very firm free cash flow in the coming years. And in addition, in the case of Geopark, they are like a unique company. They are investing in Argentina. They recently purchased a block in Vaca Muerta. So it's another way you can be exposed to Colombia, but at the same time, partially diversified with a position in Argentina. I'll go to the next. Okay, well, so in the case of Geopark, as I mentioned earlier, they have like a dual strategy. For one, they have some assets in Colombia, which are cash cows with very low production costs. And on the other side, they are investing in Argentina, in Vaca Muerta. In the coming years, we think this strategy is complementary because they have a positive cash flow in Colombia, and they're going to have intensive capital needs in Argentina. So they're going to be able to finance the Argentinian assets, basically mainly from the Colombian assets. And one of the particularities in Argentina is, although it's a very capital intensive, especially at the beginning, because this is a fracking, they are going to be fracking fields, they have the advantage of having a very short cycle of production. So this means that they can recover most of the investment in a short term. And this also gives them a lot of flexibility, because in the case, if we have an environment in which the oil price decrease even more, they have the advantage that they can reduce the investment in Argentina and just wait and see and take advantage and just benefit from the Colombian assets. So we believe this is a very complementary strategy on their side. This is a projection of Geopark. As I mentioned earlier, you can see both the operation of the operating cash flow from Colombia and the operating cash flow from Argentina. And we're expecting by 2029, in a $65 environment, they will be able to cover their interest payments and have a consolidated free cash flow a positive consolidated free cash flow. Also want to point out that with this investment in Argentina, they were able to extend the life of their reserves. And now they have in 2P, in proven and probable reserves, they have almost 13 years of reserves in when we combine both assets. Yep. And our other recommendation is Sierra Col. Sierra Col is basically the cash cow of Colombia. They operate in three basins, and their two major basins have the advantage of both have the advantage of having very low cost of production, and in addition, their production in Arauca has the benefit of producing relative light oil in Colombia, so they also benefit from having the lower discounts. And this is also a company which has been able to maintain a reserve replacement ratio above 100%. So we believe they will have a very firm free cash flow in the coming years, even if oil prices fell. We have the next one. Right. Okay, these are projection of Sierra Col. You can see how firm is the free cash flow, and given that they are basically a cash cow, we are also expecting they're going to pay a lot of dividends for their shareholders. But even in this case, they are still able to maintain to keep reducing their debt in the coming years. So how are the spreads of these companies compared with Ecopetrol? We can see they are currently having around between 350 and 400 basis points above similar debt of Ecopetrol. We think this is very attractive, especially if you consider that Ecopetrol, although it's the national company, is a company with higher costs, higher leverage, and which has the pressure from the current government, which is trying to extract as more resources. Although we believe Ecopetrol should still have lower yields than Sierra Col and Geopark, we think current spread of around 400, between 350 and 400 basis points is excessive. We think it should be with a spread of around 150 and 200 basis points Geopark above and Sierra Col above Ecopetrol. That's it. David?
Thank you, Rafa. I am going to present here first macroeconomic perspective from the Peruvian economy. Here, the main thing that we have to bear in mind is that the Peruvian economic indicators are usually in the best position if you're comparing them with Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, another country and Chile, in LatAm, okay? We have the higher growth rate of GDP, we have inflation under control, below the central bank target range, we have the local currency has the lowest volatility among peers, so on. So the Peruvian economy has managed to still continue to grow despite all the political turbulence, noise that we have been facing around 15 years, okay? Moreover, another positive factor that we are facing right now is that all the metal prices are skyrocketing. Currently, our terms of trade is at the peak, and this allow us to start to grow by this external factor. Another important thing with the Peruvian economy is that we have a lot of private public investments here in Peru that are surpassing the $50 billion mark. Okay, this is a lot of investment from the Peruvian economy, which are expected to be continue and executed until 2029. Moreover, these two factors are giving a boost on the and make the economic here in Peru very resilient. Okay. Moreover, if you see how the growth is composed, the components of the Peruvian growth, you will see that also the domestic demand is growing. In this 25, and is expected to keep growing in 26, 27. The best thing is that not only we have a more formal jobs, but also we are facing increase in wage, okay? So we have more families that have jobs, but also they are in the formal side of the economy. And this gives another boost for the resilience of the economic here in Peru. We still have to manage the informality. Informality is very high in Peru, around 45%. That's one of the major challenges that we should have to face with the new president elections that are going to be taking place on May and June 2026. Please, next one. Here, just a quick overview of what we are going to face in 2026 regarding these political elections. In 21, when Castillo won elections, we got 24 political parties. Okay, now the thing is that we have almost the double, 43 political parties. The effect of this is that it allows or makes more probable that some outsider can surpass the threshold level that we have in 2021, that was around 12%. With 43 political parties, maybe this threshold is below that 12%, okay? So this make us that this probability that this outsider can enter to the second round of elections in June can be possible. Currently, all the polls that are released in the market doesn't show any outsider or any leftist candidate that are, jeopardizing the picture that we have right now. Right now, we have central right candidates that are leading the polls, and it's expected that this should continue in the following months, and hopefully they will confirm that in the elections of May and June we have a positive outcome for the Peruvian economy. Okay, but that's the thing. The thing is that we have 43 political parties. We have to maybe a lower threshold level. And we have also a big percentage of undecided voters, around 50%, 45%, which is huge, Please, the next one. This volatility, this uncertainty affects the Peruvian economy, but not in a long-term run. It's mostly very just a peaks when this political noise turns on and then quickly it turns off. So it gives us opportunities to invest in Peru. Peru is making things from the economic side very good, but this noise can give us a good entering point for making investments in Peru. Okay, one of the things I like the most to present here is what happened in 21 when Castillo won the elections. For example, if you see in the chart here, here's the pen, the sol, against USD, and you will see that the Peruvian sol didn't rise a lot in the first months, but then when the political election start to continue. After the first round of elections, when Castillo won the elections and compete with Fujimori, the FX makes a big jump to be posted above 410, which is very high for the FX here in Peru. Then we have political noise regarding the government of Boluarte, and now we have a new president, which is Geri. But why the effects didn't change a lot with this new president? Because we have terms of trade in the sky, we have a solid macroeconomic and domestic demand keep growing. We have also very big investments, public and private here in Peru that are continue going. So these are the main reasons why the FX didn't move a lot with this new election of this president. However, we don't discard that some of this political noise will turn on in some point of time. Statistically, it starts in final of January, and they start climbing the FX. And also another economic variables. So we have to be alert for this. Please, next one. Here, just a quick overview what happened in 21 when Castillo passed to the second round. All the sovereign bonds jumped around, in average, 200 basis points, okay, in just 1 month. And then when the whole thing start to come, rates declined sharply equally in 1 month. So this gives you an opportunity to invest in sovereign Peruvian bonds, but you have to be alert of this political noise. The same happened with the corporate bonds. For example, I showing here 2 bonds from Banco de Crédito and Interbank, and they also jump in when this political noise kicks in. But once this political noise start to fading away, rates start to decline. No? Okay. Please, next one. Next, Rafa, please. Thank you. Now we're going to present the 2 companies that I really like for 2026, which here is Volcan and the other one is Auna. Volcan has a bond that matures in 32, is rated B, and the history with the company is very satisfying. You know, in 2022, 2023, the company was facing losses. Make investment not related to the core business of the company. Volcan is a top producer of zinc, silver here in Peru. Then in 2023, enter Integra. Integra buys a big stake from Glencore and also from the family members of the Volcan. Okay. Integra start to making this turnaround of the company. It successfully made refinancing of the 26 bond that Volcan has in place in that time and issue this Volcan 30. And then now in the last quarter, the company has issued a new bond. This is the Volcan 32. Okay, these bonds are secure bonds. The company is, as you see in the next slide, you will see that the company is making things very good. Its performance is very close to Buenaventura. Okay, Buenaventura is also a top mining producer here in Peru of gold. However, Buenaventura is trading 222 set spread, while Volcan is trading above 400 of set spread. Okay. If you compare the numbers here, you could see that in very metrics, for example, the EBITDA margin, ROE, they are almost similar. The only thing is that Buenaventura has this B Volcan has the B rating, while Buenaventura has this B plus rating. Okay, but if you compare and you try to plot and see how this evolution of the company has become, you can see in the top left chart, you will see the evolution of yields. The one that I want to see here and point is Volcan 30. Volcan 30, for example, in some point in time was trading at around 40% of yield, and they make a major decline from this 40% to being below 8%. And once this 32 new bond was placed on the market, is currently traded a little bit above this Volcan 30. Okay, so I really like this company. I think you should have a look to the numbers. The company also has a new project which is called Romina, that is expected to start operations in the second half 2026, which also will boost results of the company, financial results. It's expected that the EBITDA will rise 50% for 2027 and so on, almost an increase of between 30% to 40% on EBITDA, with no major increase in debt, because most part of this capex that are required for Romina has been already implemented by the company. Next, please. The other company that I really like is Auna. Auna 32 is a major player here in Peru, also in Colombia, has operation in the healthcare business and oncological treatment. Okay, here in Peru, it is a Peruvian company. Okay, has a long data here in Peru, is leading the market here, and then 5-6 years ago started to operate in Colombia, and recently has started operations in Mexico. Okay, the idea is that Auna wants to replicate the successful model that has in Peru, in Mexico. Okay, with it's a new market. The main characteristic that has the Mexican market is that people are not used to pay for an insurance for oncological treatment. Okay, and that's where Auna is very, very competitive. Okay, and very specialized in this oncological treatment. So we are expecting that the company continue to improve in 2026 and so on, as long as market share in the Mexican market start to increase. Okay. In the meantime, Peru and Colombia will continue to be the cash-making machines, and they will continue growing. The numbers of the company are pretty good. It has a EBITDA around 220 millions, a net income positive and very low, but is a characteristic of this type of industry. You know, here is this industry works with high leverage, as I will show next, please. And the company here, I have presented the numbers of one of the most suitable peer for Auna, which is Rede, no? And Rede, Edwin, I'm going to answer just in a minute, please. Auna, the good thing regarding this Auna, if you compare with Rede is a major player in the Brazilian market, is that Auna has very similar numbers. If you compare, for example, EBITDA margin, ROE, and so on, the only thing where Auna has a lower rating, for say so, is per se in the rating. Rede has BB+, while Auna is B+ single, no? But Auna, if you compare with these bonds, for example, Auna has the characteristic that has a first line on all the buildings and all the hospitals and clinics that are in Peru, Colombia, and Mexico. And if you make an exercise regarding how many beds the company has in Peru, Colombia, Mexico, you will reach that the market value of these buildings is around 45 to 50% of all the financing that the company has made for the new bond in 2032. Okay, if you add to that the company is making 200 millions per year in average of EBITDA, you will have by 2032 a good percentage of the whole financing secured by the company. And this company is trading above 500 set spread, okay, while its comparable is trading very, very low. No? So I think this is a good investment related this Auna. I would like you to review and to invest in 2026. I have some questions. Let me see, please. Maybe can you show me? Rafa? Can you tell me what the questions are, because I have some issues here. Let me see, please. I have a question here.
Okay, I'm reading the question. One's from me, so I will answer that later. And the first one is, what's the probability that is an attempt of acquisition, a hostile acquisition to Geopark? Rafa Molina.
Well, the attempt by Parex of Geopark, I think, has already. I would like that. It's not going to happen. Both companies were not able to reach an agreement. Well, Geopark has used this poison pill in order to 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 stop the acquisition of Parex in their company. However, I believe, given that Geopark has been the target of two hostile acquisitions in this year, I believe that is a sign that the assets of the Colombia are undervalued and that other oil companies understand that these are very good assets and which have a very positive free cash flow. So although I think they are not going, this acquisition, the last acquisition is not going to be realized, I think this is a good sign. And also I think it's positive that Geopark has been open to a possible acquisition or merge. It's just that the prices they have been offered, they consider are still too low for their own assets.
And the other question is for me, and what are the possible scenarios for Movistar Chile? The possible scenarios are there are a lot of possible scenarios, but the main ones are one that Movistar actually goes bankrupt and basically goes to liquidation. In that case, probably the bonds will go to 30, 35 in price, as we saw in WOM and almost BTR. So basically a lot less than right now. They're right now at mid 50s. But in the meantime, there is, as I mentioned, a lot of game theory because as we see right now, they have a positive equity of almost $1 billion, actually more because that's in Chilean billion pesos, so it's a little more than $1 billion. So it's in interest of all parties, from Telefónica España to the future buyer, that this transaction will take place. Obviously, the incumbents, América Móvil, Entel, and WOM are very interested because when there's only 3 players instead of 4, margins probably will go up, although and the competition will lower because with 4 players since the entry of the market from WOM in 10 years ago, the competition has been fierce, and that's one of the issues that had Movistar struggling as it is right now. So probably is bankrupt, and another is an acquisition without much intervention of the FNE, the antitrust unit, and the last one is an attempt of acquisition with a lot of FNE intervention that will eventually end up in a bankruptcy, but with low probability because the FNE probably will intervene as much as it can without the probability of Movistar going to bankruptcy. I don't know if there's any more questions.
Here is a question for me. What happens if a non-market-friendly president won the elections? How it should affect Volcan? That's a very interesting question because Volcan is has a long data operating here in Peru, around 60 years, 50 years. So where they are located, they have able to build good relation with all the communities surrounding. So these communities are one of the major labor that Volcan use in the production of the minerals. For example, in 2021, when political candidates start to visit some of the cities, beside Lima, went to where local minings of volcan are located. The people of these communities were the one that expelled all these candidates that were against the huge mining industry, because they rely on these jobs and they have a good relation with these companies. Even the company invests in schools, hospitals, roads, and it's very intrinsic in the community life. So that's why I don't believe that any leftist candidate that may win this election should have a huge effects on volcan operations. There is a question for you, Rafael. If there is a political change, what are the chances that fracking in Colombia may be allowed?
Well, currently, fracking is not forbidden explicitly in Colombia. President Petro did an attempt to forbid it in the Congress, but that was not approved. However, even if it's not forbidden, fracking needs to be each project needs to be approved, and none of those projects have been ever approved. I see a change in the view of Colombia of the fracking. 8 years ago, even centrist politicians were against, or were claiming being against this technology. And now that Colombia is in the need of import natural gas, and that is increasing the natural gas tariffs, there's been a change. Even candidates who were in the Green Party and who in previous election were firmly against that now are advocating for approve it, or for let it go. So I think if there is a political change, that's a necessity for the country. As I mentioned earlier, we have tremendous fiscal imbalances, so there is a need to increase oil production and tax gathering from part of the state. So if there's a political change, I think there's a high likelihood. And even if there is not a political change, I think the need may compel the next government to change its position.
Please, is there any more questions? Please, we'll be happy to answer. Okay. I think it will be all. Thank you, everybody, for your time here. We really appreciate your interest. We are here to help you in whatever you need. Just to let you know that this presentation and also the video is going to be placed on our research webpage, where you can access them and review. And please feel free to contact us if you need anything else. Thank you.